Hi guys, today's episode is with Erin Todd, an amazing athlete, clinician, businesswoman. She's done a lot of fascinating stuff. Apologies in advance, the audio is not perfect. We had a few technical difficulties. We've smoothed them out as much as we can, but I would really encourage you to push through that because she's an amazing woman who's done some really good things, and it's well worth a listen. All right, enjoy. What made you, at age, was it 34, decide, you know what, I haven't had enough sport, let's go do this footy thing?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I remember watching the first year of the AFLW, and no doubt I was a bit jealous. Like, being a Victorian kid, I would have loved to have played footy from when I was little, but you just couldn't play. Like, at least I think probably kids that are like 25, 26 will say, oh, they played with the boys. We just weren't allowed to play. Like, you just had to find another sport. So when I was little, I remember saying to Dad, can I play footy? And he's like, well, and not being rude, he was just like, you're just going to have to find a girl's sport. So I played basketball, which was fine. Like, I love basketball. But then I remember watching the first season of the AFLW, and at the time, might have been the second season, can't remember. Alan McConnell gave me a buzz. He played at Fitzroy with my dad, and he said, do you want to play some footy? And I was pregnant with Xavier. So I was like, oh, no, I'm 9 months pregnant and I am retired from sport. Like, please don't ever call me again. And my please don't ever call me again would have been because I really wanted to play, right?
Yeah,
like,
you knew yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, delete my number. That is it. Do not call me. So I watched and I think anyone that's watched the competition, it's just grown in leaps and bounds from year on year, hasn't it?
It's been amazing. Yeah.
So I think 5th season was just finished, 6th is coming up. And so I said obviously no to the first season, and then I had a little baby, and you get obviously very distracted with your first because, you know, your entire life changes. And then I had just had, like maybe 2 years later, I just had the second little girl, Yale, and the Giants were going into what they call winter series. So like they fly down to Melbourne, play a couple of games in the VFL, and like come back. And Yale was probably 2 or 3 months old tops. And Alan called me again, and he's like, why don't you come play some footy? Come on. And I was like, at that point, I was like, I've had 2. I'm not having any more. I've got a little boy and a girl. I'm pretty stoked at that.
Great way to go. Yep.
Yeah. Bang, bang, done. Like, what's the worst that could happen? I can just get fit again after having 2 kids.
Yep.
So
how fit had you kept yourself as a baseline? Like, you're pretty committed to your fitness.
Yeah, really, really fit through the first one. Came back and played basketball straight after I had Dave. Way too early, like maybe at 8 weeks. Ridiculous. Played a season of ABA. And then I was in pretty good shape. But I would say pre-children, maybe 75% of what I was pre-kids.
So that's not too bad though. That's actually
not
pretty
too
good
bad.
going.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
Not too bad. Then I had Yale, so I probably dropped a little bit more. And then, so yeah, she would have been about 3 months old, and Al called me and he's like, come on, just come and play some winter series, just see how you go. I remember rocking up to my first Giants training. It was at Giants Stadium. So it was like a Wednesday night. It was freezing cold. And at that point, you realise how much bigger the footy field is compared to the basketball court. Like, there's no hiding. Like, you're 3 months after having a baby, and they're doing 200 repeats on the 45 with 20 seconds left in between through 6 with 2 minutes off, and then we're going again. And I'm like, wow. Like, I literally just had a baby. But honestly, how else do you get back to that level rather than just going and being at that level and just trying to hold on? Yeah, for as long as you can. You're never going to run that hard by yourself.
No.
Unless there's other people there and you have to get there. But to their credit, the Giants, they weren't just like, you will do it all. Like, bang, have a go. Like, they did pull me from things.
Yep.
And I did most of the skills and like probably half the running to begin with.
Yep.
And I think I played 4 winter series games.
Okay.
So literally the first 4 games of football I had ever played. So I'm 34, or 33 probably then, had 2 kids, and they're the first 4 games of footy I've ever played. I played against Collingwood, Essendon. It was 3 games, Collingwood, Essendon and Melbourne Uni. So that was really cool, great experience.
Just no playing in domestic, just
nothing,
straight in.
Nothing at all. Nothing, yeah.
Amazing.
And it was really cool, really good experience. I would take Yale down with me because she was little. They can fly when they're under 2 with you. And Mum and Dad would come to the airport. I'd give Mum and Dad Yale. Then they'd meet us at the game. We'd play. And I'd get her after. And it was really cool. And the Giants are such a great family club. They're so inclusive. They're just phenomenal. Probably the best club I've ever been a part of.
That's so
which
cool.
is, high praise. And it's very different atmosphere, footy to basketball, because, you've got the classic analogy of you play 22 players and 18 are on the field, right? And everyone's getting in. There's no, will I get in tonight?
Yeah.
Or there's no 3 people at the end of the bench that are spewing because they haven't played for 3 weeks.
Yep.
And are kind of waiting for someone to play bad for their chance. When you're in the team, you are playing. Obviously 5 players might not get picked, but,
but if you're
playing and if you're in the 22, you're playing. And even the very best player, they need the 22nd player. They need everyone. Everyone's going to play equal amount of game time. When you're running on and off. There's no 2 ways about it. You just go hammer and tong for your amount and then you run off. So just by that, virtue of that, it's a very different dynamic within the team.
Because there is an element in basketball where you are sort of competing with your teammates. There is a scarcity of minutes, isn't there?
There's not an element of it. It is in your face every session. Yeah. Monday training, it's benchies v starters. Off you go. You are playing on your direct opposition.
Yeah.
If the benchies beat the starters, then probably you're going to get in.
Yeah.
Aren't you?
Yeah.
So within a team, it can be so competitive. And that's why we go back to that connectedness. That's why if you can still compete really hard within your team but stay connected, you're going to be better off. Where I found footy was a lot more of an inclusive within the team because you just need everyone. You just need bodies, don't you? You need everybody to crack in. Then just by virtue of the way the sport is with basketball, you can just have one superstar that shoots 45 for you every week, can't you? And then
supporting cast, you can get around.
Yeah. But it wouldn't matter if you got 40 touches every week. If no one can kick a goal, your team still loses, don't they? So just generally the feeling at footy was really cool. And being able to take Yale down through that winter series was awesome. I probably underestimated how much I was doing. So, I was doing all of that training, flying down. I was still breastfeeding, still probably getting up, 2, 3, 4 times a night.
Wow.
And she was good. She slept through the night by about 7 months, which I don't think is too bad.
That's great, yeah.
But by Christmas the following year, I was cooked. And I ended up having, I think, tonsillitis probably 4 times in 6 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And I ended up with glandular fever. So it was probably good. I didn't play that year of AFLW and I just sort of got back on track, got more sleep, got a bit healthier, and then played a full...
So you were able to train to such a level that you had systemic problems, you were able to wear your system out and get sick that way. Would a normal people have had a soft tissue injury and broken down, whereas because you were better at managing the soft tissue side, you were able to push yourself? A saving grace, if in an alternate universe, if you were less diligent about managing your musculoskeletal system, you'd probably just have injured something, got a little rest, and been okay. Was that kind of the case that you were able to push your body to its limits because you didn't break down with softies?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it was probably more through the virtue of having done so much training for so long. So from 17 to 30 in a high performance environment. So even more so than the girls I was playing AFLW with or AFL with, they probably hadn't done the amount of just in basketball, you just play so much, don't you? You play every week, every year, sometimes twice a week. And you do your 3 sessions and your gym and your shooting. You're on your feet a lot. So I think my body was, like I think physically and my soft tissue and my joints were very well equipped to handle it. But I think there was just not enough rest,
It's just a limit.
and I was just doing a bit too much. And you just give so much, don't you, when you're breastfeeding? Like I wouldn't have been able to get enough in. So then you're not sleeping as well as you would and all of that. And you've got 2 kids. So you've got like a 2.5-year-old and a 6-month-old.
It's so full on. And obviously, I've seen my wife, do that with 2 kids, and it's just such a full on thing because it sounds until you're in it, it just sounds like, I don't know, like, oh yeah, you've got like, it's the equivalent of having to wash the dishes twice or something. Like it's an extra chore you've got to do. But it's like you have to make nutrition for another human. Like that's a whole thing, and do that on a sleep deprived state. It's
exactly.
Yeah.
And then you feel the weight of making sure you do it properly as well, like because it's your own kid. You can't, so you're never not like, oh well, today you'll just like there's no chop out with newborns, is there, when you're breastfeeding?
None at all. And so you took a year off, and then but still trained and.
Well, just the summer off, really. Just probably from like November through to maybe January, February. And then the feedback from the Giants was, which is fair, you just need to play a fair bit more footy. Like get your body right, play a fair bit more footy, because I'd played 4 games.
Yep.
So I watched that AFLW season, but I trained on with the Giants. So that was really good. I was exposed to that, really good group, all of that. And then I played a season of like domestic footy in Sydney with Inner West. And then I've just recently played my first AFLW season off the back of that season.
That's great. And how did you go? Are you happy with your first season? And I suppose, are you happy? And how many more seasons have you got in the tank? Because good
question.
I remember I trained Chloe Malloy as a junior, and then I went on to see her play. And I remember training her and thinking of you and thinking, oh, geez, if the timing had been right, Ez would have been a Chloe Malloy level figure in AFLW. How many more years do you reckon you've got in the tank? So I'm asking terrible questions. I'm going to start again. How far into your current potential do you think you are? Have you performed at 50% of your potential, do you think, or 70%? And then follow-up is, how many more years do you reckon you can give it a crack for?
Yeah, look, it's a really good question. I think, so I did the pre-season with the Giants and then played that season. And I think the last, however long we've been off now, 3 or 4 months, the amount of inroads I've made in that time athletically has been significant. So I think post-kids, you probably lose a bit of your fast twitch and like your sheer acceleration. And I needed almost that entire season with the Giants, like properly with the Giants, to get back. So I feel like athletically I am 50% better than going into last season already. I'm moving better, I'm feeling better, and I feel like I got my pace back. And I think most people would say, "Oh, you're 35 now. How could you do that?" And even I was thinking, maybe I've just lost my pace. I've had 2 children. I'm 35. Maybe that's just the way it goes. But to the credit of the S&C at the Giants, he's an absolute jet. And if I have a reasonable year this year, I'll owe him everything.
And who's that?
His name's Tom Redden. So I worked with Tom at Cricket. Now he's come over to the Giants and he's a jet. And we've done just complete targeted speed work. So I think the season held me in good stead to get my aerobic capacity back to where it was. And I think probably aerobically I've always been okay, fine.
You took up rowing as a little hobby while you were trying to make the Sapphires, and got to like nationals with it, didn't you? Like you went. Yeah,
I did. And then I remember
you said, don't tell anyone.
Yeah, that's right. It went all right, but you have to be so light to be a rower that they were like, well, you're going to have to pick. Do you want to row or do you want to play basketball? And that's a pretty easy pick, isn't it? Like, who wants to row basketball? So, but it did get me very fit, I remember, for that Sapphire stuff. Yeah. So, but yeah, I think really in this off season, having done some real targeted so 0 to 10, and then that like 20 to 40. So we do 2 specific sessions, either the 0 to 10 or the 20 to 40 stuff, has really sort of helped me a lot.
Are they
and it's
flying
that
20s, or is that flying stuff, or you going from a acceleration into it?
Yeah, so like build up and then go from 20 to 40, yeah. And I think that stuff, I've never done any specific training for that in basketball, because like you'd be at the end of the court by the time you get to 20.
Yeah. I mean, 16 metres foul line to foul line, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. So like the 0 to 10, I think came back really quick. Like I think when I played basketball, I was pretty good at moving in small spaces quickly, like change of direction stuff. So that holds me in good stead at footy. But just that pure, like once you get going, can you go?
That velocity.
Like what? Yeah. I haven't done a lot of that, and doing some real targeted work now has really, I think, really helped.
That's great. And it's fun, that kind of running too, isn't it?
So good. So good. So much better than doing endurance training. Who wants to do 1K repeats when you just do 40-metre sprints? But I guess to answer your question is like, I guess it's twofold. Like I would love to say I've got a fair bit of extra time left to play, because I just love competing. I think that's been a really good thing for me coming back to footy, is I didn't realise how much I missed playing a ball sport and the banter and the fun that's involved in being in a club. But that competition is really, like, I guess, a really good outlet for me. But I'm also like diligently working off field to really, you know, I guess put myself in a good place for the next thing. So I wouldn't say, oh, I've got 5 years left, because if the right opportunity came up off field, I would have to obviously intelligently invest in that, as opposed to being a 35-year-old AFLW player. But I definitely want to play a couple more years if Alan's listening. So
that's awesome. And so talk to me about the strength side of it. So I'm always firstly, I'm curious about is, what do you think makes a great sports coach? And then I want to talk about what do you think makes a great S&C coach, because there are different skill sets, I think. And you've had a lot of elite sports coaches. What do you think is the key attributes?
I think if we kick off with coaches, like sports coach, I think obviously you have to have that baseline of understanding your sport and then your tactics and all of that. But it is completely people management for me. If you can get, as we touched on before, everybody buying in and playing somewhere near their best, you will be successful. You might not win it all, but everybody will walk away feeling an element of success for that season, that game, that session, whatever it is. So if you can, and I think there needs to be like really clear, diligent planning on building your structures, your buy-in, your week-to-week stuff. There needs to be like significant like planning going on behind the scenes, so much so that people probably don't even realise that that's happening, but it's being filtered in, and then managing the people into whatever that needs to be, the game plan and all of that. So, yeah, I think my biggest thing would be getting buy-in to the game plan. So everybody's 100% buying in and playing their role and buying into their role. And then that will obviously ultimately mean everybody's playing somewhere near their best. You can't expect everybody to play their very, very best game every week. But if you're operating at 95, everyone's operating at 95, then you're going to win more than you lose, aren't you? And I think for an S&C, it is just that, like that real one-on-one relationship management, isn't it? It's trust. If you can get trust with an athlete, they'll do anything. They'll do anything they say. Obviously, again, I premise this with having the underlying skill and knowledge. I think that's your baseline, isn't it? That's a
prerequisite, yeah.
Yeah, and then if you get complete trust with that athlete that you're working with, if it's one-on-one in a small group, they'll trust you to try stuff too. And that stuff might not work, but they'll be willing to have a go.
Yep.
Like, as an example, I mentioned Tom and we're doing this sprint stuff, he'll often say to me, okay, I'm going to just throw this drill in, just let us know how you think it goes. And if we have to scrap it, so be it. But if it's good, we'll do it again next week.
That's great.
Athletes don't mind that.
I think it's great
you know,
coaching.
you can try, you can try something different. And like sometimes I'm like, TR, that was awesome. I could feel it here, and here. And it's that constant feedback, isn't it? So I think the S&C needs to be like, how did that feel? Where did you go? Like what, you know, give us some feedback. So then again, they've diligently planned and like no doubt, you know, like cycled your programs and all of that sort of stuff. But I think if that number one thing is if you can get trust with that athlete, they'll do everything, well, hopefully everything you tell them to do, you know, 110%. And then you can try stuff and you might find some like, you know, really gold stuff in there when you sort of go out on a limb and try something a little bit different.
Because you've created a better collaborative relationship. It's not a dictating thing where you're telling them what to do. It's a situation where you're collaborating together. I'll never forget once I had an elite athlete and she hadn't been exposed to much S&C. It was late in her career, and I was asking her questions about, you know, how'd that feel? What do you think we should do next? And she's like, "That's your job. You're the coach. Tell me what to do." And I was like, "No, that's not how this works.
Yeah.
Like, we got to work it out together." Yeah, it's very interesting.
And I can distinctively remember when I was early days training with you, and Carly Wilson was going really well then with her basketball.
Yep.
And there was significant feedback with her. I remember you would work very closely with Carly and be like, how was this? How was that? And she was obviously a great athlete, but very articulate on what worked and what didn't work. And her feedback was probably like completely invaluable for you.
It was huge.
And really helped.
Yeah, hugely, yeah. It was great. And I mean, and you know, getting to know her, like, it's one of the interesting things with training female athletes too, is that she was of the personality type where she was really good at giving feedback, but also sometimes I needed to just kind of bully her and just make her do some of the stuff. Because she'd be like, "Oh, I'm not that good." I'm like, "No, you're actually really good. Let's go. Let's go destroy this." It's you know, there's different moments. Diving in a little more technical, what are your favorite? What do you think are the most important exercises you're doing in the gym for footy? Because it is a different sport. What do you love? What do you hate? What do you reckon is really central in terms of the lift? So the running, the velocity work, and the acceleration, pretty obvious. In terms of the lifting side of it.
Okay. So obviously any good. We do this like the strength stuff, the speed stuff we're doing at the moment. I'm finding really good because we like do like a really good warm up series, and that could be like glute activation and all that sort of stuff. Then we go onto the track and do the running. There might involve some sleds and some different things. Then we go to the gym. It's obviously all within the same spot, and then we lift really heavy from there. So I think the sequencing of that I've found really good. And then, you know, and it's normal stuff. Like it's nothing crazy. You know, you got your deadies but I think for me,
trap bar or straight bar?
Trap bar.
Nice.
I think you can just lift a bit heavier, can't you, and just get in a better position.
Yeah.
And I think probably for me, anything that's really hard is probably the one thing that you need to be doing. So if you're really good at an exercise, you probably don't need to emphasize it. So for me, anything hammy related, I'm quite quad dominated. Hammies, glutes, like fire them up. I think that's been working really well for me. And we've been doing a lot of like technique. So like being able to be on one foot and doing switches. So to the next, to the other foot. And then we do doubles. So you might go 1, 2, and then move into 3 switches. And we do that. Really what we're focusing on is just that real trunk stability. So just get your trunk so stable and just your arms and your legs moving to really get going. And that just seems to activate everything, doesn't it? So core, glutes, hammies. And I'm just, even though I've been running forever, like I'm just in such a better spot, like for straight line running. And then if you take that onto the footy field, even if you're in a position where you're getting a ground ball, you just can't be pushed off your spot as much. That's what I've really found. Like I'm just much more I guess, stable or powerful over the ball, and then you can burst out.
And what are you attributing that to, being stable over the ball?
I think it's just all the trunk work, trunk and glute work. And therefore, you just get yourself in a better position, and then you can get from the ground up, and you just can't be pushed off your line as easy. Really
is there one that stands out in terms of the trunk work? I'm always looking to get good specifics.
The switches against the wall.
Yeah, okay.
So like if you've got, you're in, like you'd be in that lean forward position. Yeah. And then we chuck in other stuff, like, so you might do it with one hand. You might do it with a med ball. And then we've done some that are off the wall, holding one of those like things that's got the water in it.
Yeah, okay, yep.
Yeah, so then you're like, flailing everywhere to do your switches. But yeah, the switches on the wall and the switches, just normal switches have been gold.
Nice. Good stuff. So that's training well ticked off. Talk to me about, I'm really interested in understanding what your role is with Cricket New South Wales, because cricket's not an area. Did you play cricket as a...
No.
How did that
I haven't played cricket. Yeah, so I just sold the business. I sold the business, and then part of the sale of the big business, I had to work within the business, I think for about 6 months. And then after that, I was sort of not at a crossroads, but at a time where I thought, well, what do I actually want to do? Like, do I want to stay working in health, being a practitioner, owning, I guess, clinics or practices or whatever that may be? Or do I have passion in another area? Do I want to do something else? And I think, like, as I spoke about earlier, like, my passion is in sport. And not just women's sport. Obviously, I play women's sport, but in sport in general. So I thought, what would be my ultimate job? And it would be like either in a, leading a high performance program, not from an S&C perspective, from like, an administrative perspective, and or working in sport commercially. So, from a operations type role. And so I thought, well, if that's what you want to do, then you just got to transition back through. So that's when I started my MBA, because I thought, well, I probably need some sort of business acumen and some sort of like underlying education to just say, yeah, I'm literate in this stuff. And then I just needed to get myself a role in sport, and the role that I saw, which looked really good and well within my capabilities, was player development manager at Cricket New South Wales for the women. So essentially what I do is run their off-field stuff. So that could be anything really. It's like there's like obviously big wellness, mental health components to it. So if they've got any issues there, they can always come to me. But also just like managing their study, work, what that looks like and how they're going to develop their off-field skills, competencies, resilience, all of that sort of stuff. So then when they eventually transition from sport, out of sport, are they well set up to be successful in the next part?
What a perfect role for you.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel great. Yeah, I feel like I can have a really good impact, and like I feel like I bring a wealth of experience, personal experience to the role too. Like, and also an element of, what do you mean you can't study? You do have enough time. I know you do.
I did it. Don't talk to me.
Yeah, and they're like, okay, damn it. So they can't really get too much by me.
Yeah.
But yes, it's been a really good role, and cricket is so well ran, especially New South Wales cricket. That's all I can speak, for. And I have an unbelievable boss at cricket who runs our female, like head of female cricket. Like, she's like a great mentor. I've learnt so much from her already. She's an absolute jet. So like, it's been really good learning, very interesting role. I feel like I'm finally giving back to sport as well. I've obviously gotten a lot from sport. So I feel like I'm giving back. And then like alongside the learning of studying, like my MBA, I feel like, yeah, I'm in a really good place to sort of transition my career to sport.
That's so good. And you still got so much time. Like, you still actually only quite young. Like it's that weird thing where you're old for a person in sport, but for a person in business, like you're young as.
Yeah, that's right. So, yeah, like I've got some big goals and all of that, but I'm really happy with where I'm at the moment and just ticking along and, like obviously just laying the foundations for the next thing.
That's awesome. And look, you've been so generous with your time, so I've just got one more question and then we'll wrap up. Where do you see, we've come a long way, I feel, in the last 10 years in the women in sports space. I think it's well overdue, but it's great to see it all happening.
Yeah.
Where do you see things getting to? Like, what are you hungry for us to push women's sport to? Like, what do you think is realistic, and where do you see things going to?
Yeah, I think we're in such a good spot, aren't we? And I think the foundations have been laid, and anyone that's playing, at the elite level or the professional level now really needs to say thank you to those that came before, no doubt, because they're the people that did it for nothing and really, pushed it. And I don't even think it needs to be pushed now. Like the evidence is in the product. Like we spoke earlier about the AFLW and how much that's come on. I see the kids that come into the program now, like a couple of the girls that I played with, athletically, they are unbelievable. And they've only played footy. So their skills are there too. Imagine in 3 or 4 years' time when everyone in AFLW list has only played footy and they're that good at athletes. Yeah. Like it'll be like AFLW will be like watching the WNBL. And like I remember growing up playing basketball, and guys basketballers had only respect for the women's basketballers because they knew how good they were.
Yep.
There was no having to say, hey, we're good. They knew we were good. There was no drama.
Sometimes better than the men. I'll never forget.
Yeah.
It was Dean Kinsman was telling me a story up at the AIS, and it was, I can't remember who the coach was, but it was a situation where there was the boys playing on one court, like a national team guys and national team girls on the other court, and the ball got knocked from the boys' court onto the girls' court, and one of the players kind of loped onto the court to get the ball out of it. It was a little disrespectful towards the girls, like wasn't quite as, not to the standard of his coach. And the coach dragged him in and just ripped him to shreds. And his words were, "See those uniforms you're wearing? They paid for those uniforms." Because, our funding's based on FIBA rankings, and the girls have always generated a lot more financial because of the rankings. And it was just such a nice reminder. Yeah. And so, we sort of took that for granted a little in basketball, but it's great to see everyone's now seeing this kind of normal, that equality being normal, not a fringe view.
Yeah. Well, that's right. And who knows whether it'll ever get to the point where some of those more traditional sports like footy and cricket, the funding into the sport is equal. But I don't think it matters. No. As long as each sport is holding up its own and people understand the product, you will not ever watch the AFLW and it be the same product as the AFL.
No.
But you don't need it to be.
No.
It'll be like watching the NBL and the WNBL.
Yeah.
And sometimes watching a game of WNBL is much better than watching a game of NBL. But similarly, sometimes you watch a game of NBL and that was such a good game.
Yeah.
And they're different, but they're both good. And I think in 3 or 4 years' time, maybe even next year, who knows, that you'll watch the AFLW and you'll be like, wow, those girls can flat out. They won't say, gee, they play like boys. They'll just say, gee, they play like footy players.
Yeah.
And the skills will be good and they'll be jets. And if I work in cricket now, that's already happening in cricket. The Australian women's cricket team, they're phenomenal. And again, it'll be different. You watch a women's Big Bash and you watch a men's Big Bash. And I think the general consensus is, at least when you watch the women's Big Bash, it's like real cricket. They're playing real cricket shots. They're not just trying to hit six up every ball.
Bash it.
But some Big Bash games are phenomenal, right? So again, they're both great, but they're just a bit different, and that's okay. So I think those other sports, I think female sport within the next, if you give it 10 years, I think of my daughter who's 2, she can play whatever she wants now. She can play footy, cricket, basketball, whatever. She might choose not to play. That'll be a disaster. I don't know. No. But she will be able to play whatever she wants from where, like under 5. She won't have to then pivot to another sport because there's no pro like establishment. So I think, you know, you give any women's sport 5 or 10 years and the skills will be just as good as the athletes.
Yep.
And like, you know, basketball, soccer, 2 of the really good ones that have been around for a long time. And you look, what's the WNBL established for over 30 years now? I think the W League's the same. But if you look at the AFLW, it's been there for 5 years. Like,
it's still in its infancy,
Yeah. But you had to bring it for girls to see it, to want to play it.
Yeah. 100%.
So you have to show it. Otherwise, there's no point. So I think we're in such a good spot. I think the sports will generate their own. Like, you can see the crowds at the AFLW now, crowds at the Big Bash. The Women's World Cup final, 90,000 people at the MCG.
Yeah, that's great.
You know, it'll generate its own. So I have no doubt that it'll be great and there'll be so many more professional comps that girls can play in, which is like really exciting, isn't it?
I think it's awesome. And it's so great to have to get to see you in part of the mix as well. So it's awesome. Ez, thank you so much for your time and insights. This has been brilliant. Where, if anywhere, can people follow you? Because you're not a prominent social person. Do you do much on the Twitter, or are you fairly anonymous?
I'm not on Twitter that much. I'm on Instagram a bit. Get my followers up, Darren. Come on.
What's your handle on Insta?
Okay, I'm Erin Todd 3.
Okay, excellent. And we'll pop that in the show notes as well, so you can't miss people if you forget that. And thanks again, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Darren.
Thanks, Ez. See ya. Okay, hope you enjoyed that episode. You'll find all the relevant show notes over at coreadvantage.com.au. Also on the website, you can find more information about our athletic development services, education, short courses, and everything else we're up to. So that's coreadvantage.com.au. Cheers, guys. See ya.